Welcome and thank you for joining us for this sit and sip. Hopefully you got your coffee. I got mine. Cybersecurity training, and the topic is about don't let the hackers win, secure your business right now. And for this morning, I am going to be the main presenter. I'm the CEO and owner of ComTech. We are, for those that don't know us, we're a 31-year-old, I guess technically 32-year-old IT and phone company here, located here in Graham. And I also have joining me Scotia Saunders. And Scotia, if you would introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Scotia Saunders. I'm with Keystone Business Solutions. We are a business software solution provider located here in Burlington. Our primary product that we support is Sage 100, or back in the day they called it Mass 90. We've worked with Mike and his team a long time, and we do software support, training, and not development, but the other things related to keeping your Sage 100 system up and running to help. So we look forward to working with Mike on this today, and we're so glad you're all here.
Great. And just to give everybody a heads up, the way this all came about is we had a live cybersecurity event back a few months ago, and Scotia and her team came and saw the content and thought this would be a great thing to share with her clients, and also invited some other folks out there that that maybe couldn't attend the live event, and they're joining us today. So, and we also have Hunter Farlow. He is he's our marketing director here at ComTech. He's our mediator for the event. Although you may see Ethan's picture up on the screen, Hunter's using Ethan's login to manage the event. So that's not actually what Hunter looks like. So let's go ahead and get into the event and let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in regard to the cybersecurity is just a quick history of where we've been in the last couple of years, because all of us can agree that life has changed in a lot of ways. January 2020 to now are just two completely different eras, it seems. And from an IT standpoint, obviously COVID drove this. That was the biggest game changer, going on. But one of the things that we saw happen is that folks are now working from home. A lot of folks are working from home. Depending on the numbers you look at, it could be upwards of 50% have now went home. And what that did from an IT standpoint is it made things incredibly difficult for IT staff. Before, we had you confined in your office. We had you behind a firewall. We had a moat around the office, and it was real easy, not real easy, but it was a heck of a lot easier to protect the data and the network itself. Now, everybody goes home. Who knows what kind of connections they have? They probably don't have firewalls at all. They're working off home machines that may or may not have antivirus on them. It just explodes the environment and creates a lot of attack vectors. And it's a real challenge for any IT department. So you combine that with the great resignation. A lot of you on this call are business owners or office managers, so you know what I'm talking about there. It's hard to find people. Well, finding IT staff, I can tell you from personal experience, we have over 25 people that work for me, and it is a serious challenge, and it's true literally worldwide. There's a big shortage of IT staff. And you combine that together with the economy, things that happened, there was a lot of struggling businesses out there. And when you struggle, your budgets get smaller. So when you combine all of these things together, hopefully some of that didn't affect you, but you'd be a rare one if it didn't. So you combine all of this together and you look at it from a hacker's standpoint. If you're sitting over in Russia or somewhere else and you're a hacker, all you see now is a target-rich environment. This is the perfect scenario for a hacker to take advantage of. And there was a poll done by Sophos, which is a global antivirus company and security company last year. And they took a poll of thousands of their clients, and 50% of the businesses said, yes, we did get a cyber attack of some sort in 2021. And that a cyber attack could be anything from full-on ransomware to a business email compromise where funds were sent somewhere they shouldn't, phishing attacks where emails were stolen. It could be anything. But 50% said yes, they were attacked. 25% said no, but another 20% said no, but we expect to. And the 6% that said they didn't know, that's kind of scary, not knowing if you'd even been attacked. Some of the shocking statistics, you always have to throw in the gratuitous statistics when you have a seminar, but since the pandemic started, there's been a 600% rise in cybercrime, and it is still just going up. It's getting worse and worse. The FBI said nearly $2 billion in business email compromises happened in 2020. The numbers for 2021 aren't quite out yet, but they're definitely going to be higher. That is, for example, I mentioned earlier, a business email compromise is, let's say you get an invoice that's been altered by a hacker and it says to send the ACH funds to a false bank account, which people fall for all the time because they look legitimate, and $2 billion lost there. Another one is there was over $18 billion paid in ransomware. Literally right now, every 11 seconds, there is another victim. And I just got back literally yesterday from Orlando. I went to a cybersecurity training conference, a 3-day intensive conference. And one of the things that they said we should be very, very aware of is that the statistics were 58% of the attacks were coming from Russia. And with the latest events that are going on right now, you can only expect it to get worse. You may be lucky and may have not been exposed to this and may not seen it yet, but it is coming. And I can tell you, we support hundreds of companies and thousands of endpoints, and we have a unique visibility on this to where we can see across multiple industries, and we see it hitting everyone, large and small. So if it hasn't happened to you yet, consider yourself very lucky, but I wouldn't count on luck to protect you. And that's why you're here today, is to learn a little bit more. Some of the costs that are involved with this are the ones you see on the right on the slide. It shows highest ransomware ransom paid in 2020 was $30 million. You can see the averages there are very high, but to be honest, most of the companies that we see getting hit, they're not in those. They don't factor into those averages. Ransomware is still expensive. Damage control is still expensive, but there are costs you have to consider that maybe you hadn't thought of. One is a loss of clients. If you get attacked and you are out of commission, you can't produce. Let's say you're in manufacturing and you can't produce anything. It's going to create delays. Clients, it's very possible you may lose some clients. If you're in the medical field and you get hit and your client or your patient data gets exfiltrated, gets sent out and sold on the dark web, who's going to trust you? They're going to go somewhere else. That's just a couple of examples. And of course, if you lose clients, you lose revenue. And that's a problem unto itself. And then you have the hidden costs that people don't realize. And this, I'm speaking from real experience here, because we do the damage control when these things happen and we see it firsthand. You see things such as, I had a manufacturing center here locally. They got hit with ransomware. They were down for an entire week. They out of courtesy and trying to do the right thing for their employees, continued to pay payroll. They were totally non-productive, could not work for a week. What would that do to you if you had to continue paying payroll with no production? Of course, there was no production, so there was no income. So that got delayed. All the shipping got delayed. It's a major problem. And then they had to pay us to do the damage control. So it was a very, very costly event. And the good thing is these things can usually be avoided with a little bit of prevention. And another thing that you run into is a loss of confidence. I gave the example earlier about medical, but you also have financial, you have legal, you have all different types. If you get hit and your data is exposed or you're shut down, then it's going to put a question in your customers' minds. Is this someone that I want to continue working with? Honestly, if my bank gets hit, if my CPA firm gets hit and my data gets sent out onto the dark web, I'm probably going to be looking for another vendor because they may not have taken security seriously, or they're going to have to do a lot of work to convince me that they were doing their due diligence. And the sad fact is, and there are many studies to show this, that when you add all of this up for small businesses that get hit, 70% never recover and actually go out of business within a couple of years, because this is a cumulative effect that it can kill you and destroy everything you've worked for. One place also for cost that you'll notice that are changing, any of you that have cyber insurance, you'll see your rates are going through the roof. It is insane what's happening. This chart is from it's very fine print, the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, and it only goes through Q2 of 2021. And I know from personal experience, it's went up a lot higher since then. There's so many more attacks, and like bullet point number 2, this is from them, not from me, but I can definitely verify it. A lackluster risk management protocol, which means businesses are not taking it seriously, and they're not putting into effect the safeguards and the precautions that they need to. Therefore, risk goes up, rates go up. You also have other things that are there on the bullet list I'm not going to go into, but when you get ready to talk to your insurance agent, you watch. Your limits typically are being cut, the deductibles are being increased, and a lot of policies are not being renewed at all because your risks are just going up so high. And you also notice the surveys that you have to fill out are getting a lot more intensive. There's a lot more questions on there than there was a couple of years ago. They want to know what their real risk is before they insure you. Let's take a look at a quick video that's from 60 Minutes that I think sheds a little light on this as well. About the first 10 seconds is silent, so your sound is working, but just wanted to warn you, it does have a little bit of silence at the beginning.
You may be talking to more companies and IT people right now than you'll ever have a chance to address. So let me ask you, what's the best way to prevent this from happening?
Great cyber hygiene. So that would mean patch your networks regularly and rapidly. It would mean dual factor authentication for password, maybe even multi-factor authentication. Certainly, your backups need to be secured offline. Your network needs to have internal firewalls so that actors who already have access cannot move laterally through the network. And lastly, I would say that if you're allowing your employees or your IT staff remote access, understand that that in and of itself creates an additional set of vulnerabilities.
I will tell you, one of the things that we've learned is there's not many people out there talking about this, right? And so people are not prepared, or not as prepared as they could be. So we go out and we tell them our story. As we do that, we tell them about the lessons that we have learned. And I think one of the most important that we tell them is that, look, it's not if, it's when, so be prepared. And we also tell them that fundamentally good organizational dynamics are what you need. So the things you're trying to do anyway, that's what's going to help you get through this.
One of the key points that he mentioned in that video is to go ahead and plan for an attack. We are in literally a target-rich environment, and no matter how well prepared you think you are, the attack is coming. Hopefully you'll just fend it off. Your shields will protect you and it's not going to be a problem, but you need to really plan for an attack. If it happens, how am I going to recover? How am I going to get my data back? You know, what are the steps and the policies that we've got to take a look at to survive it? And one of the things, let me just pause for a second here because I'm making an assumption. They're mentioning ransomware several times, and some of the people on here may not know what ransomware is. Ransomware is when a hacker implants software on your network. I'm just going to oversimplify it, but you know, let's say a user clicks on something they shouldn't, opens an attachment they shouldn't, goes to a website that has ransomware on it, and they click on it. And what it does typically is it encrypts all the files that user has access to. So if that user can see your SharePoint files, if it can see your server, if it can see your QuickBooks files, all of the Word documents, everything gets encrypted so you can't open it. The only thing you can open is a message that pops up on your screen saying you're being held literally for ransom. It typically has a timer on it and says send $100,000 in the next 12 hours or we're going to delete your data and delete the unencryption key. But if you pay, then we'll give you the secret decoder ring to get all your data back. And about 60% of the time, if you do pay the ransom, which is not advised, if you do pay the ransom, you do get your data back. That's not good odds. And it's a position nobody wants to be. So one of the things that he mentioned in the video was to be sure and practice good cyber hygiene. And that is a huge webinar of its own that we could go through, but it includes things like making sure you have a formal patching program, you have security updates, you have backup, preferably in at least 3 different places. You're using multi-factor authentication with strong passwords. One thing that I like he mentioned in there is talking with your peers. He's absolutely right. When was the last time you talked about cybersecurity with any of your business associates? I do it every day, but that's my business. This stuff is typically fairly silent, but yet people are getting attacked all over the place. And it's not something that anyone that's been attacked is proud of and wants to shout from the rooftops, but it is something that you should be mentioning when you have business meetings, you have peer group meetings. You know, hey, what are you doing to protect yourself? Have you had any incidents? Is there anything we can learn from each other? What does a common threat look like that your people may have fallen for or were exposed to? So, and also educating yourself like we're doing here. And one thing that we all need to remember is that cyber hygiene and cybersecurity is not something you install. It's not something that you can just flip a switch and say, I'm secure, and you're done. It doesn't work that way. Cyber hygiene, I like to relate it very similar to going to the gym. It's something you have to do. It has to become a culture for your business. It has to be something you repeat constantly in order to keep it healthy and to keep it up to date. You can't just eat a banana once a week or once a month and say, oh, I'm good, no problem. I'm healthy from now on. It doesn't work that way. And to And at this point, sometimes it's running through their minds, I'm small. I only have 5, 10, 15 people. I'm not really a target. None of this really applies to me. Something you have to consider is that size does matter to some degree. I mean, if you've got North Korea going after a financial institution and they're trying to beat down the door of Chase Bank, yeah, they're going for a specific target. But a lot of the attacks are done through phishing, which means they send out millions of emails and they just hope somebody's going to click on it. They're hoping for a big fish, but they'll take a little fish because a little fish might be a $50,000 ransomware demand. And it's still going to cause a great deal of pain and suffering for that particular business, even if it's only a 2-person law firm. So it can hit anybody and everybody. And to prove that, I know this is kind of an eye chart. Don't even worry about trying to zoom in and see it, but this is an example of attacks on an Office 365 account, mine, that here at my office, I wanted to pull real data for you. And it shows that in an 8-hour period, that we had over a dozen attempts to access the data from, I've actually got to zoom in here so I can see, from Seoul, Korea, there's one from the Sudan, Thailand, there's some on here, I don't even know where they're from. There's Brazil, there's several different ones that are on there. We are not a bank. We are not a high profile target, and we're getting attacked hourly by folks trying to get in. If you don't have the right safeguards in place, the consequences can be dire. And to show you a local one, Orange County here in North Carolina, Hillsborough, they got hit by ransomware, and this is just one that made the news. We know of a lot that didn't hit the news. You see the bigger ones, like here's 110 nursing homes that got hit, 14 million was the ransom. This one did actually concern me greatly because this is a local bank for me. They're right down the street, a few hundred yards. First Horizon Bank, they got hit. All of these got hit within the last 18 months. 40 million to one of the US's largest insurance companies. And of course, we all know about the pipeline because that affected all of us. The interesting thing about the pipeline goes back to cyber hygiene again. The way a lot of folks may not realize, the way the hackers got in and deployed ransomware on the pipeline attack is there was a list of logins and passwords that were sold on the dark web. And what happened was someone noticed that one of them was a pipeline email, login and password. And they thought, well, let's give it a try. Let's try attacking their firewall and see if we can get in. Come to find out that it was an ex-employee. The account never got disabled. The VPN to get into the network was enabled. And so they were able to waltz right in, and the pipeline, they didn't use multi-factor authentication. So the hacker was able to breeze right through the firewall, get in, log into the network as an active user. Of course, no alarms are going to get set off because this is all perfectly legit. It's an active user with a valid login and password. Proper cyber hygiene would have stopped this. Simply having MFA installed would have done it. Making sure ex-employees' accounts are disabled is another one. You could just go down the list and you see how it affected half the country. At this point, sometimes folks will think, well, maybe I'm actually in a compliance business. Maybe I'm in financial, medical, legal, and I'm following all of the rules on this that are dictated by the government. So I'm safe. I don't have anything to worry about. Our security team actually worked with a hospital about a year ago that had just passed a HIPAA compliance certification, and they got hit with ransomware. 700 machines got infected. So compliance doesn't mean you're safe. Compliance means you've met the least qualifications for that particular industry. A good way to illustrate that is, I'm not a motorcycle rider, but if I were a motorcycle rider, to be safe, I'd want to dress like this guy. As a matter of fact, he looks really cool. Maybe I should take up motorcycle. But he's got a cool helmet. He's dressed in full leather. He's got knee pads. He's got gloves. He's probably as safe as you can be on a motorcycle. Now, let's say the law said that you have to wear a helmet and you have to wear gloves. To be compliant, that's it. Okay, this guy's compliant. Well, so is this guy, if you think about it. I'll move on off of that. We don't want to leave that picture in our minds very long. But it does show you that being compliant doesn't mean you're necessarily safe. And that's something to really seriously think about. So doesn't antivirus protect me? I get that question quite a bit, especially at the live events. Is like, I'm doing everything that I should, or I think I should. I've got the greatest antivirus out there. It's rated very best. Doesn't that protect me? Well, obviously, no. If you think about Colonial Pipeline, you look at the banks, you look at everybody that's getting hit, don't you think they have antivirus? Of course they do. The problem is antivirus is a completely out-of-date technology. It works based off of a bad guy list. So I like to compare it to the FBI's 10 wanted. If I'm running a bank and I'm letting people through the door, then, and I've got this list of these 10 bad guys, and I'm checking every person. When they come in, the way antivirus looks at it is, okay, they're not on the list. They must be totally safe. I'm going to let them go walk behind the counter, walk into the safe. They can play with the money. They can do whatever they want to because they're not on the list. So they must be good. Do you see a problem with this philosophy? Obviously, it just doesn't work for a whole lot of reasons. One of the biggest reasons it doesn't work is because there are over 1 million, yes, 1 million new pieces of malware created each year. Do the math, you can figure out how many per day that is. Now try to keep your bad list updated. It's impossible. You can't do it. And that's the way the hackers get around it. As a matter of fact, here's one more very short video that shows how easy it is to get around antivirus.
So I am joined here by Mike Sasanskin from Synac. You're going to show us how easy it is to hack into a computer. So this is my personal computer.
So in this attack, we will pretend to be a wireless access point that you normally connect to, let's say, in a hotel. So if you go in there and you try to log into something called Four Seasons Guest.
Okay.
As you'd expect, it's, the Wi-Fi is around, you'd want to be able to connect to it, and a person who just arrived will think, I'm a guest, I should connect to the guest network.
Sure.
So now if you go to a website that you would normally use, like Yelp.com.
Okay.
And normally what happens when you go to a website just after you've logged into a hotel network, it says, oh, please log in, you're a new user. So here it's asking for your room number and last name, which it would normally do. Right? And actually I can see your information show up here. And so part of the attack is that it tries to convince you that you need to do an update. Your machine is out of date and it's vulnerable. So you want to click on the download button because it's sort of convincing you to do this. And once you've executed, that's it. You already have been exploited. I can see it here. It says Aditya's MacBook. Let's say if I want to take a screenshot of your of your webcam, right?
Okay.
So I have a special command here for essentially accessing your little camera right here. If I say execute. There we go.
I just saw a green light pop up there. For a second.
For a second, but now it's already too late. And I already know what's going on around you.
Oh, wow.
There we go. This particular attack, it recorded the picture. but you can actually record the video. You can also record sound if you wanted to.
That's really disturbing.
You can execute things on the behalf. So what I'm going to try to do is actually open the calculator application.
Okay.
Here we go.
There's my calculator, it just popped up.
I can basically execute any types of commands I want on your behalf.
So, what can people do to protect themselves?
You should sort of be on the lookout for anytime you sort of do an action and then the computer asks you to do something on your behalf. Like, you know, you downloaded something and said, hey, please enter your password. You know, if you didn't expect that to happen, maybe you should kind of stand back a little bit and say, well, does it normally happen when I log into a Wi-Fi access point? Or if you are logging into a network and you didn't expect to be redirected to an update page, you know, you should kind of stand back a little bit and say, actually, I'm not going to download this until I go home and I can trust my Wi-Fi.
Well, thank you so much. Great to see this.
Glad to have the opportunity to hack your machine.
Thanks.
One of the things that I think is interesting, and I'm glad he used a Mac in this case, is a lot of folks that have Macs think that they're immune to viruses, ransomware, and these kind of problems. That used to be the case for the most part, but the hackers have gotten a heck of a lot smarter. Yes, they are a little more hardened than the Windows machines, I do agree, but they are still vulnerable. So don't think just because you're using a Mac that you're totally safe. Another thing to take away from that video is how authentic the experience was for the victim. If you look at the pop-ups that he created, and he literally created those to simulate what the hotel would have in place and capture that data and get the malware installed. The hackers will go to no lengths to fool you. I kind of compare it to a pickpocket that they're trying to do everything as smoothly as they can, and so you don't notice what's going on behind the scenes. It used to be you could detect this kind of stuff because of horrible misspellings, or it was just obvious tomfoolery, like the Nigerian prince scam, things like that. They're way beyond that now, as you just saw. Another point that he made that is a valid one, as he said, to watch out for anything unusual. The problem with that thinking is that what's unusual for one person may not be unusual for someone else. Everybody in their office probably has a clicky Kathy around. She'll click on anything and everything that comes up. And no amount of training seems to stop it, because that's just in her nature. That's just the way it is. So employee training is very important, and it definitely helps. It cuts down on the number of incidents quite a bit, but we also have to be very realistic as well. Clicky Kathy, or whoever the person might be, it's been proven that even after phishing training and they're taught what not to click on, 5% of users will still click on them. So I don't know how many employees you have, and I don't know how many emails you get per day, but do the math and you can see how vulnerable you are to potentially that user clicking on something that they shouldn't. And a curious statistic that goes right along with this, I think, is, I know this isn't IT related, but I wonder if these are the same people. 7% of surveyed Americans think chocolate milk come from brown cows. 7%, 5%. These are our employees and our staff members and our associates. So think about that hard for a little while. But there is a solution. And Biden actually has, after the pipeline event, he said enough is enough. And he actually put in place a zero trust initiative that has to be done for federal governments by the end of 2024. And so this is a very good thing, long time in coming. And honestly, I think by 2024, it's going to still be too little too late, because the attackers are on the rampage right now. But at least there's an effort being made. And you're Next question, I'm sure, is, well, what is zero trust? You've seen it on the news. I just mentioned it, showed you the article. And how does it apply to us being a small business? Well, zero trust is just a concept of a lot of different strategies. And to keep it simple, I'm breaking it down into three real quick ones. One is application control. For example, if on your network, excuse me, let me go back to here. If on your network, you, for example, don't allow Angry Birds, maybe Angry Birds is not a business application that you want everybody running, then application control takes care of that. It only allows applications that you want on your network. So if somebody tries to go out and download Angry Birds, they're going to get denied. Same thing is true for Dropbox or other applications that could potentially be a security risk for you. And the beauty in that application control is it also stops the hackers. If 99% of the problems are solved if the hacker cannot run his software, cannot install anything, then it's also called a default deny rule. Instead of working like antivirus that works exactly the opposite, this is going to block everything except what is allowed. Another second component to it is ring fencing. And ring fencing is a fancy term for something that I hope you're already doing and may not even know it. A good example is this past summer, I went to Cancun, and when I was at the resort, they had their own mobile app. So you could see a map of the property, see the restaurants, the menus, etc. So I loaded the mobile app, and when I was loading it, it asked for permission to see my photos, contacts, and I forget what else, but contacts was enough. That was enough for me to say no. There's no reason in the world why a menu and a map program needs to read my contacts. So I put a ring around that application and said, no, I'm not going to allow that. I also advise you as you're loading apps on phones and other apps to take that into consideration because they can reach out and see more data than you think they can. As a matter of fact, that's where ring fencing becomes very, very important on your computers too. When you load QuickBooks, when you load Word, when you load good applications, they can go out and see other data as well. One of the scariest things about that is Chrome and Chrome extensions. If you load and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it or it's malicious, but if you load a coupons.com or a Honey or any of those extensions into your browser, by default, that gives that application the ability to read everything that's in Chrome. Okay, now, are you storing your passwords in Chrome? Perhaps for your banking? Do you really want Honey or coupon.com to be able to read that data? Think about it. This is back to the cyber hygiene again in education. If you don't know these things, you're exposing data and exposing potentially critical information that you shouldn't be. Ring fencing helps stop that. It says QuickBooks can only access the QuickBooks data, and that's all it's allowed to do. It can't go to the internet. It can't run PowerShell. It can't install other programs, and it creates that fence around the program. And this ties in with it as well. I'll stick with QuickBooks for a moment. For storage control, it's exactly what it sounds like. The files that you need access to are restricted only to the people and the programs that need access to it. A good example is QuickBooks again. Only thing that needs access to a QuickBooks file is your backup program and QuickBooks. That's it. Restrict everything else. There's no reason why Word should be able to run a macro, pull your QuickBooks file, and upload it to a Russian website. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. So there are controls you can put in place to stop that. So some of the final tips as we start wrapping up here is avoid what is called shadow IT. This is one of the things that Zero Trust helps with tremendously. Is I mentioned the Dropbox example earlier. If you use Office 365 as an example for your company-wide policy, that's just how we operate. All of our files are in 365. We use email with 365. Then you don't want somebody going out to AOL using their AT&T email. You don't want them installing Dropbox without you knowing it, because if they do, they can send files out of your business and you'll never know anything about it. And those files are out there. Who knows if they've got security on it or not? They might be using the password of password and have your financial files out there just for their convenience so they could work at home. If you have Zero Trust installed, then until you explicitly say Dropbox is an allowed program, then they can't load it. You don't have to worry about it. Again, 99% of the problems are solved. Use multi-factor authentication anywhere and everywhere you can, especially banking, financial sites, anything like that. Report strange behavior. If you do see anything odd, weird pop-ups, you got prompted for a password when you don't really think you should have, anything like that. Don't attach anything to your network without permission. This has become a bigger thing in the last few years with what's called Internet of Things. You've got doorbells, you've got toasters, you've got refrigerators, you've got all types of different devices now that can be attached to the network. And if you do it without permission, that device might be vulnerable. It may not have had its latest firmware. It might be a Chinese knockoff that has literally malware built into the camera. You just don't know. There was just a year and a half ago, there was a casino that got breached because the aquarium maintenance company dropped a thermometer, a Wi-Fi enabled thermometer in the aquarium and attached it to the Wi-Fi of the casino, and the hackers got in through the thermometer. So this stuff really does happen. Another one is don't use email that isn't company approved. A whole lot of reasons for that, similar to the Dropbox example. If you're using email that is not secure, not monitored, not filtered, you don't know where your data is going, and you don't know what these people are clicking on that could bring a threat into your environment. If you're using a business class paid email like Gmail, Office 365, etc., then typically you will have some filtering, some controls, some reporting. If someone uses a free Gmail account or anything of the sort, that's extremely dangerous. They are typically unfiltered. And just a little side note, if you read the fine print on any of the free email providers, they're free for a reason. They can actually read all of the data, and they're entitled to. It's in the fine print. Because they're giving it to you for free, you're giving away your rights for privacy. They can actually read all of your email and use it for marketing or any other purpose they want to. So be very careful with free email accounts, especially for business. Some of your most important takeaways for today, as again, we wrap up here at the very end. Zero Trust is the best way to protect your network. Your company is going to be attacked, so act right now to implement a Zero Trust strategy. If you need help with that, you don't know where to go, that's obviously our business. That's what we do. We're happy to help you with that. And at this point, you've got a question to ask yourself. You can either embrace security and make it a part of your culture and literally change the way you're doing things, because the old ways do not work. They are insecure, and the hackers are hoping that you don't make any changes at all. You can fear it, And that's what several people do. They just really fear it and they don't want to make a change. But the worst part, and I hate to say it, 90% of the people, and this is exactly what hackers are hoping for, they ignore it. And we see this constantly. Ignoring a threat does not make it go away. So if you ignore it, we're going to have a very serious "I told you so" conversation, and it is never fun, and it is not one that anyone wants to have. Please don't ignore security and don't put it off. The hackers are hoping you remain low-hanging fruit and don't do anything, because they're active and they're on the prowl. So if you are curious, there's nothing sales involved in this, but we do have a special offer for you guys for attending, and we appreciate you being here. We are offering a free test to find out if you're vulnerable to hackers. You may have had penetration tests done in the past, and you know they're very expensive. They're typically $3,000 and up. We have a certain number that we have available from we have a third-party security company that we actually use to help double check our work, and they've made a certain number of scans available to us for free. And I want to extend that to you guys if you're interested. Hunter is going to be putting a link in the chat, so if you'd like to, just click on it and request that. It's also going to be in the recording that we send out to you guys. The offer will be there, but it's a very unique test because it actually shows you what a hacker would see if he got on your network, and it shows you how vulnerable you are. It doesn't just go out and say, "Oh, you've got this port open in your firewall." I've never seen a test quite like this one before, and it's modernized to really detect what a modern hacker would see. And at that, we are at the end. So I've got a Q&A here. If you have any questions, just click on the Q&A button there in Zoom and type in anything you like. Hunter, if you would, read out any questions that you might have. I hope we've spurred some thought here and got some people wondering what they can do.
Yeah, Mike, we definitely have. And one came in that asked, I think this is quite a good question, and it's about cookies. And it says, what's the best way to respond to cookies when you visit a website? Pop-ups are everywhere asking for, options to allow or only allow the quote unquote necessary ones that, of course, you don't even know about. Is this just a window to a threat, or potentially just used for advertising purposes?
That is a really good question, and it is tricky to answer because cookies are very handy. They store data on your machine that make it easier for the website to interact with you. For example, Amazon can use it to help build histories and recommendations, things of that nature for their marketing purposes. But you can argue, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But I guess my best answer on that is it depends on the website and what your tendencies are. For example, on Amazon, we do a lot of shopping on Amazon, especially right now because you can't find product hardly anywhere in the IT realm. So we source a lot through it. So I don't have any problems saying enable cookies on that. If I go to a website that I've never been to before, that I'll probably never go to again, that I may not recognize, then I'm going to say no, because I don't want that extra data on there. And it doesn't hurt even once a month or whatever schedule you want to go into your browser and clear out your cookies. Yes, it will have to rebuild them for your common sites, but it's, again, good cyber hygiene just to do a little cleanup on a regular basis. Once a month is usually fine. Hopefully that helped answer the question. That one's a little subjective. It doesn't have a yes or no answer.
Yeah, very good. Very good. There was one more here that is around zero trust. So you spoke about that a little bit today. And for some of us, and I'm speaking personally here, I'm not super technical, even though I work at ComTech, a tech company. It's kind of funny. But what is like a telltale sign if you have a zero trust security strategy in place? Just something easy, kind of flag goes up immediately going, I know I have that, or no, I don't. And we might need to look into that.
Obviously the best test is to allow us to do the network security scan, because we'll be able to tell very quickly and see what's happening there. But a quick self-test that you can do is simply go out and try to install a program that's never been installed before. For example, I'll go back to Dropbox again. I'm not just picking on them. They have a good product. The paid version is the good product. The free version, the security could be questioned. But go out and try to install Dropbox. If you can install it, if you can download the file and you can run the installer and it completes successfully, then and you didn't get any prompts, you didn't have to go ask an administrator, you didn't get blocked in any way, then you do not have zero trust. And the scary part to that is, just as easy as you clicked and installed Dropbox, your users can go out and install ransomware. It's no different.
Very good. That's a nice little self-check method there. If you've got last question here that's came in, and it's around productivity and security. So when you put a priority on security, does that hinder the productivity or suffer a little bit there, or do they just keep on going on after the security protocols are in place and you don't see any effect whatsoever?
Well, I won't lie to you, security is a double-edged sword in that regard. It does create some hurdles for normal operations, but we try to do everything we can to make it as easy as possible. A good analogy is, if you want to secure your home, you could put a 4-inch thick steel door on every entranceway, but then you've got to swing that heavy sucker every time you want to go in and out. Yes, it's very secure, but it's a bit of a problem. There is a happy medium that you can do, and that's what the right tools can allow. For example, with zero trust, let's say you run QuickBooks. Okay, if you install QuickBooks and you, of course, install the QuickBooks updates, we can write a policy that says this is an allowed program with the allowed updates. So we don't have to question it. Every time that there's an update, you don't get a prompt. It just flows right through and works. So yes, there is a little bit of hurdle and there's a little bit of learning curve, depending on what levels of security that you work with. But I can tell you, it is a heck of a lot better than having to deal with the consequences of not having security. So it's definitely something you should employ.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. I think that is all the ones that have come in. And of course, even after this, if questions do rise, Mike will show us contact information in a couple slides, and feel free to reach out to us. We're always an open book.
We will be sending out this recording. Please do me a favor. Again, there's nothing sales in any of this. Send it to your friends, your business associates, because education is the big thing. If folks know what threats are, they got a heck of a lot better chance of defending against them. So, and if you'd like, I speak at lots of different groups, Ruatan, you name it, lots of different ones, lots of different organizations. If you would like to have a live event or a replay of this, I'm happy to do it for any special groups as well. We just want to get the word out and let people know the threats are there and the solutions too. So you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, have a good one.